Thursday, April 1st, 2021. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 8th, 2021, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 8th, 2021, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 8th, 2021, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Members of the public will have a chance to ask questions and comment on applications once the chairman opens the hearing up to members of the public. If you wish to ask questions or comment on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability and you will be sworn in and need to provide your name and address. For anyone calling in on the telephone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. To lower your hand, you press *9 once again. Please be advised this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. And I just want to make sure no one else is waiting to get in the meeting. I don't see anyone else. Okay.
Thank you, Eileen. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai?
Here.
Mr. Dorado's been excused. Mr. Husser?
Here.
Chief Kudrick has been excused. Mr. Leggio?
Here.
Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Councilwoman Richmond has been excused. Mr. Seaman? Hold on, I see him. I just have to let him in the meeting. I'll come back to him. Ms. Casper, I have not seen or heard from. Mr. Cristiano, I have not seen or heard from. And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Here.
And Mr. Seaman.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, can everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I apologize if everybody could please stand for a moment of silence for all of our first responders and those both serving here and abroad. Thank you. Okay, Eileen, do we have an approval of minutes?
I have no minutes this evening.
Okay, any vouchers?
I have no vouchers this
Any
evening.
correspondence?
I have no correspondence, just what was mailed to the members.
Okay, are there any changes to the resolutions we have on the agenda today?
We don't have 41 Randolph, which is the last one. That was
Mr. Chairman, that one, the applicant's attorney is reviewing that one, so that'll be
Okay.
on for the 15th.
Very good. Okay, let's look at the first resolution, case number SP-1080. Eligible voters are Mr. Bovai, Mr. Husser, Mr. Seaman, and myself. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Mr. Bavai?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Bavai?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay, next resolution is case number SP-1081. Eligible voters are Mr. Leggio, Mr. Nicastro, Mr. Seaman, and myself. Do I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay, next resolution we have is case number SD-2992. Eligible voters are Mr. Leggio, Mr. Nicastro, Mr. Seaman, and myself. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr.
Roll call,
Leggio,
please.
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay, next resolution we have is case number SD-2994. Eligible voters are Mr. Leggio, Mr. Nicastro, Mr. Seaman, and myself.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Leggio,
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay. First submission waiver for the night. It's case number SD-2996, 1294 Eatontown Boulevard, LLC.
You need to give me
Mr.
one
Kuchera,
minute.
you want to swear in our professionals, please?
Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Eileen, you want to bring the applicant's attorney up, please?
Yes, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure the applicant's attorney is on here. I don't see him.
Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next
Hold on 1 second.
submission waiver.
Tina, can you get him, please? Hello?
We can hear you. We don't, okay. Mr. Musto, are you here for this application?
And Ryan Farrell, who is the attorney, will be here shortly. He's trying to log in. And I apologize, but I'm remoting in. For some reason, it's going to my office. Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Musto, while you guys are working out your electronics there, do you mind if we move on to the next case and come back to you?
That's okay. Yes.
Okay. So
I'm gonna-
Eileen, are we able to get the applicant up for case number SP-1083, Eyes Fund 6679 LLC?
Yes, that's Mr. Pape. Mr. Pape, you're
Mr.
muted.
Pape, how are you?
I'm good. Am I live?
You are live, my friend.
Wonderful.
What's up,
Mr.
Ken?
Mr.
Good
Pape,
evening.
we've already sworn in our professionals. Please present your case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, good evening all. Kenneth Pape of the firm Heilbron Pape. And this evening I have the privilege of representing 6679 Ice Fund LLC. When this application is presented to the board, it's a request to repurpose the old Aldi's as an office building. And you'll hear that there's approximately 900 square feet of new building area and a total reduction of impervious area. There is a list of waivers that are submission waivers that appear in the CME report of March 26th. The list appears on pages 4 and 5. And with permission, Mr. Chair, I would defer to the determination of your engineers on this point. And it is my understanding that Mr. Rizzo has reviewed these matters, and I believe that he's prepared to make a recommendation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rizzo?
Which is acceptable to the applicant.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As Mr. Pape explained, we did present a March 26, 2021 letter in which we itemized a number of submission waivers as number 3 in our letter. And we do recommend that all of these waivers do be granted. The application is for a minor expansion to the existing building and a change of use from a shopping center or an Aldi food store to a medical office building.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Mr. Pape, does that conclude your testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and we find Mr. Rizzo's recommendations to be acceptable. We have no comment.
Okay. If no one has any questions, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to deem the application complete. And
Second.
the waivers.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Leggio,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes,
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you, Mr.
thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Pape.
all. Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, Eileen, do we want to try to get back to case number SD-2996?
Yes, I have Mr. Farrell now.
Hello.
We can, okay. Hi, Mr. Farrell.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Mr. Farrell.
Hi, good evening. Brian Farrell, Babke, Wagner, and Wolf. Hi, good evening. Let's bring up my documents here.
We lost your video, Mr. Farrell.
Yeah, 1 second, please. I'm sorry. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see me now? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. It said it was on mute, so I apologize.
No worries.
You can proceed.
You ready to proceed?
Yes, Ryan Farrell, Bathgate, Wagner, and Wolf, on behalf of the applicant, 1294 Eatontown Boulevard LLC.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Farrell, you've been here before, so you kind of know how we do it. If
Yes.
you don't have any objections, we'll just turn it over to Mr. Rizzo.
That's fine.
Okay.
I also have, Stephen Musto is also on the call. So if you have any questions with regards to the substance, he's available to answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rizzo, please.
Sure, thank you. Our office did prepare a review letter number 1 dated March 8th, 2021, in which we outlined all of the submission waivers being requested. We do recommend that all of the waivers in this letter be granted with exception to checklist item number 10 and 11, which are the Monmouth County Planning Board and Oriole SCD submissions.
Okay, and to be clear, those are just submitting the application, not getting a decision from those bodies.
Correct. That would be proof of submission to these 2 agencies.
Okay. Do you have any response to that, Mr. Farrell?
Can you just clarify which items are not recommended not to be approved?
Sure. In our March 8th letter, it is 3A and 3B, which is
Okay, got it.
10 and 11.
Okay.
You in agreement with the,
Yes.
okay. All right, does that conclude your testimony, Mr. Farrell?
That does, yes.
Okay, does anybody from the board have any questions? And if you don't, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Leggio,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
You're muted, Rob.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Have a good day, Mr. Farrell.
Oh, you too. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
Okay, we have an application to the board, case number SP-1080. I have a quick question for Mr. Cuchero. Mr. Cuchero, looking at the documentation, it doesn't appear that this applicant has visited the Environmental Commission. Does that deem this application incomplete right
It
now?
doesn't deem them incomplete, but I would recommend, let's get them, let's have their attorney enter his appearance and see what that status is. Maybe they did, and we just don't have a report.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jason Tuvell, attorney for the applicant. Before I give my little introduction on the application, Mr. Chairman, just wanted to address your item. We did actually appear before the Environmental Commission earlier this month. They were satisfied with the presentation. The only follow-up is that they wanted a copy of our phase 1 report, which we agreed to provide to them, but we did do a presentation in front of the commission.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
that is correct, Ryan. It was very well done.
And also,
So-
Mr. Chairman, as I was going to indicate later, but I don't plan on calling our LSRP, but I do have our LSRP, Mr. David Backman, available if there's any other questions that the board may have as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll let our Environmental Commission liaison or any of the other members make that decision on whether they think it's necessary.
Sure, no problem. So just to give an introduction on the project, I represent 7-Eleven Inc. The project is for block 142, lot 1.03, 639 Route 9. The property is in the HD1 zone. The goal here is to repurpose the existing convenience store with gas station, to demolish the existing improvements on the site and redevelop it with a new 7-Eleven convenience store of just under 3,000 square feet with fueling with about 6 MPDs or 12 fueling positions. The application is for preliminary and final major site plan approval, conditional use approval, and bulk variances. As you'll see, the property here is a little irregularly shaped, as it's somewhat of a peninsula with 3 frontages on Wyckoff Mills, Route 9, and Strickland. So that drove a lot of the design features that you'll see. What's also notable is that the application complies obviously with all the conditional use requirements within the zone. It also complies with a large majority of the major bulk requirements of the zone. For example, impervious coverage, where we're well under the 70% that's permitted, all the setback requirements, building height, as well as parking. So it's substantially compliant with all those items. In terms of witnesses that I plan on calling our site engineer, Jeff Martell, our traffic engineer, Matthew Seckler, and our professional planner, Christine Cafone. As I indicated earlier, I do have our LSRP available, Mr. Backman, if there's any questions. Just to give the board just a little sense of the operations of the site, you'll hear this in testimony, but I think it's sometimes helpful as a preview before we commence the public hearing, is that the application is for a 24-hour use. That's number one. In terms of numbers of employees, the convenience store will have 3 employees, which consists of 1 manager and 2 employees. And the gas will also have 2 attendants. So it's a total of 5 employees total. Deliveries, the 7-Eleven store gets 1 to 2 tractor trailer deliveries per week that are on site for approximately 30 to 45 minutes. They get 1 to 2 box trucks deliveries per day that are on site for about 10 to 15 minutes. And garbage and recycling is twice a week. With respect to the fuel is obviously done as needed, but they find that on average, it's about 4 to 5 times per week for the fuel deliveries. So I always think that's helpful for the board to know that.
Are you able to, Mr. Tuvell, are you able to quantify the times of the deliveries?
No, the times will just be during store hours. Yeah, and the gas is
obviously
24.
Correct.
Correct.
The store is 24/7.
Correct. So it'll be during windows that the deliveries can make it there.
Okay.
All right.
Just be known that we have another applicant that was just south of you, not too much, that the board requested to have a limit of deliveries. I believe it was not past 10 p.m.
Okay, well, during testimony, if the board feels that we need to engage in that discussion, we're happy to talk about it.
Okay.
And Brian too, it's probably more of a talk with Jeff about the lighting. Can we discuss that?
Okay.
Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, before we commence, is just that this will be a relocation of the existing 7-Eleven at the intersection of Casino. That store will be relocated to this property. So I just wanted the board to know that as well before we started. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions for me, I did provide my affidavit and proof of service to Eileen. So I'd be happy to call my first witness, which is Jeffrey Martell.
Thank you. Please.
Okay.
Okay,
So, Ron,
Mr.
shall we swear?
Martell,
Okay.
do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
For Jeffrey Martell, Martell, the firm of Stonefield Engineering and Design, 15 Spring Street in Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay. So, Mr. Martell, can you just give the board the benefit of your qualifications as a civil engineer, educational background, licenses held, and experience testifying before land use boards in the state of New Jersey?
Sure. First off, I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as additional states in the area. Bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Delaware, master's degree from NJIT. Been a practicing professional for approximately 18 years, testified before 100 plus land use boards in the state of New Jersey, including approximately 40 applications involving convenience store and.
Well, accept your credentials, Mr. Martell.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Jeff, why don't we get the board oriented to the existing conditions on the site? So, so let's put up our first exhibit, and Mr. Chairman, I guess we'll mark this as A1.
They're already pre-marked.
See that? We're
Okay.
Pre-marked.
more organized than I thought.
Okay, do we know that we're pre-marked?
That one is your colorized aerial exhibit zoomed out, A10.
All right. Okay. So looking at exhibit A10, it is a aerial photograph of the property and its surroundings for orientation purposes. North is to the top of the page. Subject property, which is identified as block 142, lot 1.03, is generally in the center of exhibit A10. The parcel is approximately 1.4 acres. It's located in the HD1 zoning district, or the Highway Development Zoning District. In terms of the existing conditions of the property, I'm sure everyone's aware it's developed as an existing Exxon gas station. There are a total of 6 fueling pumps on the property. There's also a convenience store underneath the canopy, as was consistent with a lot of gas stations that added convenience stores in the 80s and early 90s. There is a series of underground storage tanks generally to the south of the canopy. The property right now has one ingress driveway or entrance driveway on Route 9 towards the south end of the property near the intersection of Strickland, and then an exit driveway back onto Route 9 on the northern end of the property. In terms of neighboring land uses and developments, directly to the north is the Starbucks development. To the east is the Wyckoff Mills Roadway. To the east on the northern end of the property are a series of commercial buildings that are accessed off the entrance drive. And then to the east on the southern end of the property are a series of residential units associated with the villages. To the south is Strickland Road with Wooley's Fish Market and Seafood House. Beyond that, and to the west is Route 9, obviously, with the PNC Bank and Jug Handle on the opposite side of the property. Other than the gas station itself, other notable features I would say there are a series of easements on the property. On the north end of the property, there's a walkway easement, has an existing sidewalk in it. On the east property line along Wyckoff Mills, as well as on the south property line along Strickland, and then approximately half the property line along Route 9, there are utility easements associated with an existing sanitary sewer. Mr. Tuvell did note the LSRP for the project is present this evening, and we did have the ability to meet with the Environmental Commission. We appreciate them letting us present on short notice earlier this month. We are proud to report generally as in terms of New Jersey gas stations, this is as close to a clean bill of health in terms of this property condition that one could get. There's no active remediation that will be required as part of the removal of the existing gas station. So if the board wants more details to that, we can certainly have the LSRP testify later in the presentation. With that said, I don't have any additional testimony regarding the existing conditions.
Okay, so Jeff, why don't we move to the proposed development, and we can make sure to, okay. So Eileen, which exhibit is this? We're looking at the colored site plan or just what's labeled site plan?
Believe this is your colorized aerial of the site plan zoomed in, which is A13.
Okay, so A13 is the site plan rendering for the proposed project. Essentially, it is the site plan sheet from the set, sheet C4, overlaid on an aerial and then enhanced with the proposed landscaping and color. Again, for orientation purposes, north is to the top of the page. In terms of this proposed site plan, we are proposing to remove all the existing features associated with the Exxon, so the tanks, the canopy, obviously the convenience store and the parking lot and everything. Nothing is proposed to be, quote, reused as part of the project. And then we would come back with all new construction for the proposal of a 7-Eleven convenience store, which is just under 3,000 square feet. It's noted as 2,999 square feet. It has its front door orientated in a southern direction towards the proposed fuel pump area. There are a total of 2 underground storage tanks that are proposed. They are located on the west side of the proposed fuel canopy, essentially between the canopy and the Route 9 right-of-way. We are proposing a total of 25 parking spaces. 14 of those parking spaces are immediately abutting the proposed 7-Eleven store. There's 5 on the west side towards Route 9, and then an additional 9 spaces on the southern end of the canopy. In addition, there's 11 parking spaces on the south side of the canopy. We recognize that these are certainly not as convenient as the 14 up against the building. However, they do serve a purpose for employees. We do have our air and vac location at the southeast corner. And then, as it is similar with a lot of other convenience stores in the general area, there are times when some oversized vehicles do frequent the site, not necessarily tractor trailers, but just larger trade vehicles and similar. So it's nice to have some parking spaces remote from the building for the purpose of those vehicles as well. We do note that 7-Eleven generally looks for between 12 and 15 parking spaces for their convenience stores. So we're right in that number there with the 14 adjacent to the convenience store. We do have also a number of bike racks. They are generally at the northwest corner of the building in the sidewalk area where the sidewalk is slightly enlarged based on the fact that the parking and the building aren't parallel to each other. We've taken advantage of a nice concrete area close to the building, but out of the general pedestrian way. It's also adjacent to the walkway easement, which we do expect to be potentially the predominance of pedestrians would be on the northern end of the property. So bike rack is located in that area as well. Around the building, there's a minimum of an 8-foot wide sidewalk That essentially separates the parking area to the building itself. And in addition to that width, for the purpose of safety, there are a series of bollards that are located right at the end of the parking spaces between essentially the pedestrian sidewalk and the vehicles. So that's an enhanced pedestrian safety feature that is generally customary in the industry today. The site or the building would be serviced by a proposed loading zone and a trash enclosure on the east side of the proposed building. So it's located within the building and Wyckoff Mills Road. We do acknowledge that that loading area is in a front yard area as well as a buffer area for a residential buffer. The site is somewhat unique in that we have 3 front yards and a residential buffer that, although we don't immediately abut any residential properties, we do abut a residential zone, of course, associated with the villages and the residential properties to the east. That zone line runs on the west or the near side of the Wyckoff Mills Road. So when we talk about a residential buffer, and you'll hear from our planner later in the presentation, all our measurements have been taken off of that near side right-of-way line. Access to the property, and excuse me, I should say, I said that the loading was in the buffer. Loading is in the front yard. It's actually not located within the residential buffer. It's right on the edge of the residential buffer. But we do have some pavement we'll talk about later that is encroaching within that buffer area. In terms of access to the property, we're eliminating or removing the entrance driveway on Route 9 for the purpose of relocating it north. Purpose of relocating it is to get it further offset from the intersection in accordance with DOT design standards. So they are looking for greater offset from the intersection. So we're essentially removing or relocating, I should say, the entrance driveway further north on Route 9. We're reconstructing the exit driveway, but it's generally in the same location. We'd also be, excuse me, proposing a driveway on Wyckoff Mills Road. Sorry, something got me there. And an ingress driveway on Strickland Road. In terms of other key site plan features, we are modifying an existing detention basin that exists on the south end of the property. Right now, it generally exists in the green area between Strickland and the existing Exxon, generally in the same location. However, we're proposing to regrade that area and resize that detention basin with the help of some retaining walls to gain some volume in this area. We're also introducing at the northeast corner a bioretention basin, which of course has water quality and general stormwater enhancement benefits as well. I heard there would be some questions on the lighting. I believe somebody said before, we can certainly get to more detailed testimony, but just as an overview, all new site lighting is proposed for the property. The fixture style is somewhat decorative in nature in terms of the area lights. We're also proposing building mounted lights and canopy lights. All the lighting on the proposed development would be LED downlit with a color temperature of 4,000 kelvins. In terms of the landscaping, it's a pretty substantial landscape plan. We do, of course, recognize that we have neighbors to our east. And although separated by Wyckoff Mills Road, we understand, folks would have potentially have a view of the property, and generally as they enter and exit their development or just those that drive by the property, we of course wanted to present well from an aesthetic perspective. Most of the focus was around beautifying the perimeter of the site and buffering the property from the residential properties to the east. There is a pretty significant planting plan proposed along Wyckoff Mills. There's a variety of species proposed. We also at this point have designed the site to save a few of the pines that exist there. We originally, on our original submission, we proposed to remove them all. We spoke with the Environmental Commission and thought about saving a few based on that discussion. This plan before the board does propose to save approximately half those pines along Wyckoff Mills Road. However, in discussion with Ms. professionals, that may not be the most desirable design, as those pines may look a little sporadic if we remove a few and keep a few. And they also might be prone to blowing over as you remove some of the root systems between the trees. So we're happy to keep as many as we can, or if the design is better suited based on the professionals or the board itself's opinion, we can certainly remove all those and provide as many buffer plantings in those voids that is physically feasible. We do have some limitation in that there is a sanitary sewer easement along that eastern, southern, and half of the northern property line.
Jeff, can you just point that out, where that looks, what that looks like on the page so the board can see it?
Starts in the northeast corner, runs down Wyckoff, heads or goes across Strickland Road, and then over approximately halfway up Route 9.
So it's the hatched area on the exhibit, correct?
Correct. And I would say the applicant is agreeable to as many plantings as the board professionals feel appropriate along these frontages. However, we do note that we can't plant physically anything that would interrupt that existing sanitary. But with that one limitation in mind, we defer to the board professionals. As I mentioned in a conversation with Ms. Sparrow, I don't want to speak for her. Obviously, there are some comments in the letter, but generally based on our discussion, we would agree to all the other landscape comments that she would have. Specifically, she mentioned a number of species that she would like switched out. I think she would like some more plant material offering to the residents, certainly fill in any gaps that are in the current design or anything caused by any of the removal of the pines. We did also talk about the plantings in and around the building, and we're open to a couple of suggestions. One potential suggestion may be have some either planter boxes or planter pots that we could sporadically put around the building and the sidewalk areas, or we could put some seasonal flowers and some grasses to essentially soften that area along the building. Typically, foundation plantings have a difficult time, I think, along these types of higher turnover uses. So maybe a different type of design would be more appropriate here, which we would be happy to do. And then the other item that we spoke about with Ms. Sparrow would be an enhancement to the project would be to convert the striped island between the 9 parking spaces and 5 parking spaces and create a raised curb landscape island where we could have an area protected there for some additional vegetation, again, in an effort, I think, to mainly enhance just the aesthetic of the building and the site. Excuse me.
Just a quick question, is the proposed
Sure.
planting, I didn't see the listing, is this a 4-season buffer?
Yes, I mean, the intention certainly would be, there are some supplemental deciduous as well, but the idea would be a 4-season buffer, and then, for visual interest and just variety on top of that, look to plant some deciduous, namely the trees that we would be, the deciduous shade trees or street trees that are planted.
Jeff,
So what would that look like in the winter on Wyckoff, across from the villages?
Yeah, so we'd have the evergreen plantings obviously would retain their function. I think there was a request for a minimum of 5 feet, if I'm not mistaken, and that would be at planting. So those would be a variety of shrubs and trees that get anywhere from 6 to potentially 10 feet and beyond. That would be visibly consistent throughout the year, and then the deciduous trees would obviously in there 6 to 8 months of the year would certainly just add another visual interest to that evergreen planting.
And is there irrigation on this site for these?
There would be irrigation, correct. So everything is, there's full location on the property throughout. And it's a, it is an outsourced commercial landscape contract in terms of maintenance. And obviously we understand we'd be bound to, any landscaping that we show on the plan in perpetuity. So, in terms of anything that didn't live or we had a bad winter or whatever circumstances happen, we understand we'd have to maintain this planting plan as shown. In addition, I think what we spoke about with Ms. Sparrow would be just further plantings and further enhancements, specifically on the east side of the residential side of the property.
Mr. Martel, would you be able to zoom in along that landscaping there on for the residential buffer, just so they could see the evergreen trees better?
Sure. So here on the northern side of the property, you actually have, I guess, a double row. You have a series of plantings on the east side of the bio basin. Then we'd have the bio basin, which we would, meet any of the requirements in terms of plantings in this area.
Yeah, and Jeff, just to be clear, I should have asked you this earlier. That's not a pond or a wet basin, correct?
It's not a permanent pond, a
that's
permanent
what I meant.
basin. Right, it would drain, similar to a detention basin. However, it's planted with a series of appropriate species, and essentially it acts as a filter, a water quality measure. But the water doesn't sit there. Then we have an additional on the west side of that bio basin, and then moving south, we essentially have right now it's close to a double staggered row, but there's a row of evergreen trees. Sorry, the graphics kind of jump on top of each other. A couple of the pines here that we're proposing to save, and then a couple of the additional deciduous trees. And then specifically you have these larger evergreen trees. And the reason we have those evergreen trees, I'll show an exhibit in a second, but the main potential view shed, I guess I can show that now, from the neighboring residential would be off that southeastern corner of the development. I know you asked me to zoom in and I'm zooming out, but just to get this one point across, this will load.
Jeff, while that's loading, just to get some other things on the record, the application complies with all the conditional use requirements in the zone, correct?
Correct.
So, and those just being that gas stations and convenience stores shall be located on corner lots with direct access to both streets, so it complies with that, correct?
Correct.
All right, and then in terms of the condition, any gas station, convenience store, which includes accessory on-premises food consumption, shall limit the floor area devoted to such activities to 20%. There's no seating inside the building, correct?
Correct.
And there's also no open flame cooking within the building, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and then obviously there's no drive-through facility.
Correct. There's no seating outside the building either.
Right, okay, continue.
So as I was stating, we are mindful that the nearest residents, in terms of those who could physically potentially view the site, that southeast corner becomes really a focus area, I think, for enhanced plantings.
Eileen, which exhibit was this, just so we can identify it?
This is the colorized aerial site plan zoomed out, A12.
All right, so just Jeff, A12 for the record.
Got it. So A12, as was noted, again, north is to the top of the page. So the southeast corner is potentially where residents could view the property directly. I will note that I mentioned the loading zone is located right outside the residential buffer, but we did look to tuck that area in the trash as kind of disconnected as we could, noting that immediately across the street, I believe those buildings are used for commercial uses. So we did look to optimize that internal site design as well. But I don't know, Ms. Sparrow, I don't know if I answered your question or pointed out correctly what you were looking for me to accomplish there.
Yeah, so Mr. Nicastro, just to clarify some of your concerns, I just wanted to make sure there's no confusion. So the smaller green circles you see near the trash, and then along the circulation drive south of that, those are evergreen shrubs that can get to a decent size as long as they're not maintenance company. And then the row of circles closer to the road, those are all trees, evergreen trees. And then those darker, almost black circles, those are the existing pines that I'm really recommending they take out and just replant with something better. You know, pines are of the lowest choice as far as evergreen buffer. They lose their lower limbs. And yeah, like you had mentioned earlier, if we start hand picking out some of these trees to stay, I'm worried about blowover. And they also will probably look unsightly, and there's underground utilities going in over there on that corner.
Yeah, I agree with removing the pine needles. I'm very familiar with this area. The needles during the winter are all over the place and they kind of look bare. So
Yeah,
I hope you come up with a recommendation for that.
The lower limbs continue to come off as the trees get bigger. So we're going to be left with just poles eventually.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we're agreeable. Our heart was in the right place. Save as many as we could, but I think technically speaking, you're both correct. So we're happy to take that direction. In terms of technical reports, we did submit a stormwater report, environmental impact statement, and a traffic impact statement. A colleague of mine will speak to the traffic impact statement. But in terms of the stormwater management report, we analyzed the existing conditions, typical to engineering practices. We noted a couple of sub watersheds, essentially water goes almost in every direction from this property, directly to Route 9, directly to Strickland, and directly to Wyckoff Mills. We did analyze all of those sub watershed areas individually and are meeting runoff quantity reductions to each of those. I do think we dotted our I's and crossed our T's in terms of the stormwater control. We have also added a bio retention basin, although not necessarily purposefully to meet any numerical requirement, but obviously recognizing it's good design practice to add as many of those best management practices as we can on the property. And then in somewhat of a preventative measure, we do have hoods and sumps in the 2 catch basins that are in the vicinity of the fuel area. So essentially any of the runoff in and around the canopy or the tanks is tributary to one of those 2 catch basins. Those hood and sumps provide a preventative measure relative to oil water separation as well as any floatables. And essentially those get maintained as part of the stormwater system. In terms of the environmental impact statement, somewhat of a benign report that we put together really because the existing site is developed. It's already a gas station. A lot of from an environmental perspective, air quality, water quality, natural resources, wildlife. It's either going to be similar to the existing condition or really there is no concern relative to wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, floodplains, infrastructure, and things of the like. So we don't see any impact relative to the environment. In terms of the 7-Eleven specifics, obviously this tenant or this operator, I should say, the proposed 7-Eleven is 24/7. The largest vehicle that would enter the site is what's called the WB50 tractor trailer. It's what I call a medium-sized tractor trailer. It's not as large as the ones that you would see at a ShopRite or even a Walgreens or a Walmart, but it is a tractor trailer. That would be approximately 1 to 2 times per week for the store. And as well as delivering the fuel as needed. In addition to the tractor trailer, 1 to 2 times a week for the store, there's approximately 10 to 12 box trucks that come per week. So in total for the store, you're looking at the 1 to 2 tractor trailers per week, 10 to 12 box trucks per week, and then the fuel, which is obviously site dependent. We did hear the idea of hours for the deliveries. I do note that 2 types of deliveries the applicant, I think, would be willing to listen to the board's requests relative to an hours restriction. There's 2 that they really can't. That's the fuel, just by virtue of the supply chain and how that's ordered and delivered. There is not the ability to restrict the hours on the fuel delivery. And then there is, I believe it's once per day, a fresh goods delivery that comes early in the morning before, the early risers go to work and customers would be at the store. So that's something that, 7-Eleven, obviously it's part of the core part of a convenience store operation is having those fresh goods in the mornings. Those two types of deliveries are somewhat fixed, but I think the applicant would listen to any other requests from the board relative to that or consistent with the other application that was mentioned. I don't have firsthand knowledge. I'm sure you'll let us know.
Yeah.
Jeff,
I'm sorry, can you just explain to me how a WB50 is going to enter the site? Let's say they're coming and the parking spaces are occupied, there's people at the fueling tanks. How exactly are they going to maneuver into that loading area?
Yeah, they would actually on Route 9 would traverse the site in the drive aisle between the store and the parking to the front of the site. Then both the delivery vehicle for the store as well as the fuel would start to turn around the canopy in a clockwise fashion. The store delivery can then back up into the loading zone, the 1 to 2 times a week that tractor trailer comes. And the fuel delivery would continue to turn counterclockwise over to the fuel area. And in both cases, the truck back up into the loading zone or the fuel would continue around the site in a clockwise fashion and then exit up. The box trucks could obviously make a number of maneuvers on site.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. So when you said exit out, exit back out onto Route 9, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
all deliveries could be limited to Route 9 only. The tractor trailer, we only intend to utilize Route 9 for the tractor trailers. Obviously, the box trucks are a little more flexible. However, those could be restricted to Route 9 only as well, if that were the board's pleasure.
Jeff, I just wanted you to hit a couple other things regarding the site. First, just on the bulk standards, the application complies with coverage, building height, and setbacks.
Correct.
Okay, and it complies with the parking requirement of the ordinance.
Correct.
All right, we do need a waiver with respect to site lighting. Can you just give an overview of the justification for just the overall lighting plan and why a waiver is required?
Yes. So we have, make sure I read it into the record correctly. So we have there's a requirement the light intensity provided at ground level shall be a minimum of 0.3 foot candles anywhere and shall average a maximum of 0.5 foot candles over the entire area. So we have, I believe we have, I'm understanding that requirement that over the whole property and not just the pavement area, we need to have a minimum of 0.3. It would be our intention to provide a minimum of 0.3 within all of the paved areas on the property itself. DOT does require we cut off at the DOT roadway, I think below 0.2 foot candles. I think we can meet 0.3 at the property line. We're rated about 0.2 now. So it would be our intention to provide 0.3 foot candles for our entire developed portion of the property. I'm not sure if the requirement is also to have the 0.3 in the green areas. I don't know if the board professionals can guide me if that's part of the requirement, or is it simply within the paved developed areas?
But you don't see any negative impacts with respect to the lighting on any adjacent properties, do you?
No, but I don't know. Can we get clarity on whether the 0.3 is required in the green area or just the paved improved area?
Honestly, you're the first person that's ever asked me this, but I would say it's probably the developed area on the property.
think so.
I'm not looking to light up like the buffering around the property.
Right.
So I would say that it's probably the intention is to make sure that the developed portion of the site, which is the paved area, have that minimum lighting.
Got it. So in that case, we would comply with that 0.3 requirement minimum. I think we're just maybe at 0.2 in a couple spots, so we could get that up to 0.3 without a problem. So really the waiver request would be relative to the average. An average maximum of 0.5, I think is difficult functionally. To have a minimum 0.3 and maximum of average of 0.5 is difficult. I think in this particular application, I don't think it's possible. Namely, the fuel canopy area requires higher light levels to essentially ensure safety. Obviously, there's the physical act of the fueling, credit cards, and other interaction. Yes.
Could you please go to your C17 drawing, please?
Sure. $17, you said?
Yeah, your C17. There you go. Can you zoom in on the proposed light fixture in the upper center page?
Yeah, Ron, we don't have to mark this because it's part of the submission, correct?
I think, well, Eileen marks everything.
Okay.
Eileen, was this one of the pre-marked exhibits?
Yes, if that's the preliminary site plans, it's A3. If it's architectural, it's A4.
Okay, so it's part of A3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let me just ask my professionals a couple of questions, and then Mr. Martell will come back to you. So Ms. Beam,
Yes, sir.
I love the fact that the applicant is trying to provide a more decorative type of fixture.
Yeah.
My concern is this type of fixture, in my opinion, produces quite a bit of glare. It looks very similar to the type of fixtures that were installed in freehold development on the corner of Route 9 and what was the other road? It's Adelphia.
Okay.
Route 9 and Adelphia. I think that if they change to a different type of fixture that had more of a dark sky compliant type of look, similar to what they're proposing on the side of the building, I think they would get better control of the actual light fixture, being able to put house side shields and stuff up. And I think all of the lighting that's ending up in the buffer zones could be better controlled and be almost eliminated.
So what I will say is that you are absolutely more qualified on the lighting end than I am. But so I don't take exception to what you said at all. And if you would prefer a different fixture that would perhaps limit the ability for spillage and glare and what have you, I am all for it.
Okay, that would be my preference. Mr. Martell, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, I agree with everything you've said. I think, again, we might be victims of our own good intentions. I think we tried to, play to the aesthetic of the light, but, hearing what you just said, I mean, it may make more sense to really
Okay.
the side of functionality and controlling the light, relative to not having any additional spillover into those green areas. And
Yeah,
everything.
Mr. Chairman, if the board wants us to work with the board professionals as a condition to change the fixture, we're happy to do that.
So.
I would recommend specifically working with Shari because she really is the one that deals with the lighting.
Sure.
I mean, I'm more than happy to work with you, but honestly, it would be kind of a waste of your time. So I would defer you to Shari.
Okay, yeah, we'll take direction from the board on that. That's fine.
All right,
Okay.
that's fine. I've seen this light fixture too in the field that they couldn't find the frosted ones and they put this one in and it's pretty bright. So I agree with Brian. It would make sense to do something else.
Yeah, we appreciate the comment. There's no
Yeah, I think the key would
not
be
stuck on
just-
this fixture for any reason by any means.
Yeah, I think the key, Mr. Martell, would be to make sure you utilize house side shields properly and make sure it's dark sky compliant.
Understood. I think we can achieve both those.
All right, Jeff, do you want to move to the signage in the building?
Before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to nail something down because there was a comment made about, deliveries and timing. Can we nail that down? I know he said gas obviously is one that can't be controlled and maybe some fresh products. But let's nail down like garbage. I know, Jason, you have these issues in other towns. You represent a lot of 7-Elevens, and these concerns are always residents' concerns. So let's nail that down as far as what the applicant's willing to do to control the time of.
Yeah, look, we believe we would hope that the delivery schedule will be consistent with the existing 7-Eleven that's down the road. But I don't mean to put this off, but let Jeff finish. Let me work with the client on answering your questions so that it's really a business call as opposed to an engineering decision. So,
well, it was raised, so whatever works for you, I'm good with it, but it was a raised issue, so.
No, I got you. We'll come back to it, I promise.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of 7-Eleven specifics, we talked about the deliveries. There's no sales under the canopy. All the fuel components meet or exceed any state, federal requirement. I think one of the unique parts of 7-Eleven versus maybe some of the local dealers is that they do third-party monitoring. So in addition to 7-Eleven monitoring their fuel system themselves as the operator, they outsource to a complete independent party that also monitors their fuel system as well. So it's just a redundant measure.
Can we just go back to no sales under the canopy? Are you legitimately telling me that they're not going to sell oil and windshield wiper fluid? Because I have to say, I've been to other facilities and there's usually like a stockpile of both under the canopy for patrons that are getting gas that maybe need some oil or some windshield wiper fluid. And it's always under the canopy. It's never in the store.
Yeah, this is a site, this was a little bit unique and maybe, I think it was one of the questions. I don't know if it's in your letter, Jennifer, or the other one, but this site, both the fuel and the store will be operated by 7-Eleven. There's a number of facilities where the fuel operator is different than the convenience store tenant. And this,
I get that. I do get that, but I'm just asking because let's be honest. Nobody who's getting gas, who doesn't have to get out of their car to pump the gas, wants to hump themselves into the store to get windshield wiper fluid or oil if they need it. So I'm here to say, I don't care one way or the other, but if you stipulate no sales under the canopy, obviously that's going to wind up being a condition. And if you want windshield wiper fluid and oil under the canopy, you should ask for it. And then we can assess it from there. But I'm just saying that I don't care if it's the same operator, different operator, whatever. I don't think I've been to a gas station that doesn't have that ability under the canopy. So let's just be real and just tell us exactly what it is you want, because
Jen,
once it goes in the condition, I don't want it to become an issue later on.
Jen, let me just say this. The intent is not to have it under the canopy, but I hear what you're saying, that we would just, it's better to have the option in the event that they prefer. So we'd rather have the option. Who wouldn't want to have the flexibility? So
That's what I'm saying. So I'm just saying, don't make stipulate, like, because otherwise it's going to wind up in a resolution and then you're going to be limited.
Okay.
Point taken. Thank you. In terms of the proposed building, we do have a series of simulation renderings. Not sure what these were pre-marked as, but I'm looking at.
They're pre-marked as A17, a series of architectural elevations and renderings consisting of 4 sheets.
Great. So referring to sheet R 3.0, which is 3 of 4 in that exhibit, you essentially have 2 views here shown, one on Route 9, generally looking at, I guess, in a northeastern direction at the proposed development. And then on the bottom of the sheet, you have a almost directly north view if you're on Strickland Road.
And Mr. Martell?
Yes.
I'd just like to point out that those are the fixtures that you're most likely going to want to use.
You know, it's maybe that's coincidence that we usually use those. Again, my good intentions got me. We went decorative, but I agree. We will go back to the fixture
Thank you.
consistent here. Thank you. So we see here in terms of the building is a masonry panel building. We have two types of facade materials there, predominantly the traditional red brick, and then the stone, like a sandstone type color. That's at both the knee wall for a grounding element, and then up towards the top of the building as well. What you see here in terms of materials and what was represented in the black and white elevations that we submitted is it's like materials on 360 degrees. So although we're looking at the front of the building, if we were to look at the back of the building, there's not a drop off to a masonry block wall or an ephes wall or anything of that nature. You have the same masonry brick panels and stone 360 degrees on this. There is a parapet wall above the main roof line of the building. So what you see, that top 4 feet approximately is the parapet wall. And that of course is meant to screen the HVAC equipment, which would all be mounted on the roof of this building. There is a glass storefront facing the canopy, generally on the south side. And then in order to provide a feature, I think on the other facades where windows aren't functional per se, we've done an architectural design, which is a laminated panel with a glossy finish. And that's on both the east and the west side. So essentially facing Route 9 and then facing Wyckoff Road as well. There is a sophisticated security system that would both be on the interior of the building as well as the exterior of the building and in and around the parking areas and the fuel canopy area. In terms of signage on the property, we have both wall signs as well as a freestanding identification sign. You'll see the freestanding sign here on the view from Strickland, traditional 7-Eleven logo panel on the top, and then 2 fuel prices. On the building, we have 2 7-Eleven signs, and then on the canopy, we have 2 7-Eleven signs as well.
And Jeff, there were more canopy signs, but those were removed at the request of the board professionals when we had our technical review meeting with them, correct?
Correct.
I honestly have to say, I think even the 2 canopy signs are ridiculous. There's no reason for them. You have signs on the building, you have a freestanding sign. You know, people are generally not that dumb. They know what a 7-Eleven is, and you need relief for these signs. I don't see the need at all for 7-Eleven at all on the canopy. So I would, I know Ms. Cafone is going to be, logging in a little later, but I have to tell you that you're going to have your work cut out for you, because I don't think you're going to be able to justify it. It's unnecessary, and it's sign clutter that's unnecessary.
The only thing I would point out in response to that is that I think it's appropriate to know who you're buying fuel from. And in this, there's very little consistency in the marketplace now between sometimes 7-Eleven operates a convenience store and it's a Shell gas station, or there's 2 different.
Respectfully, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I also think you have the colors on the canopy, which very clearly assimilate with the building. So I think it's overkill on the signage. We're trying to reduce sign clutter, and I just think it's absolutely unnecessary, and I do not support the relief for it. So,
and Jennifer, if I may, I don't think the Exxon, which is the cross, has anything on their canopy.
No, I just think it's, and we discussed this at the TRC, and I said very clearly I wanted them all off. So
Mr. Martell, I think you're going to have a tough time. The board's really not going to go against our professionals.
I'm feeling the vibe loud and clear.
Can I just ask a question just so we're on the same page? Is the issue with the 7-Eleven square sign on it, but not the band?
Yes.
So the band could remain.
Yes.
Because I just didn't think, okay, so it wouldn't just be a white canopy. We could have got it. Okay.
I don't have an issue with the band because I kind of feel like that's kind of like decorative and architectural, but the signage I just think is a little bit much. So I would respectfully request that those signs on the canopy be removed.
Got it. Okay, noted. I'm not.
So we in agreement, Mr.
decision maker, but
Martell? And Mr.
I
Tubal?
yeah, I'm not the ultimate decision maker, but I know the decision makers heard you. So Mr. Tubal, we'll get back to you with the hours and that.
Okay, good. So with that being said, we're gonna take a 5-minute potty break.
Great.
It is 8:14 now. We will return at 8:20, please.
Thank you.
Board's going to take a short recess. They'll be back at 8:20.
Okay, Mr. Martell, does this conclude your testimony?
It did, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to the board, Mr. Chairman, on the couple questions you asked me to check with the client. We'll stipulate to the signage per Ms. Beam's recommendation that we would just have the striping on the canopy and not the sign. Okay?
Okay.
And then on the deliveries, the fresh food or fresh baked deliveries and the the fuel, sorry, can't have restrictions. However, we can restrict the, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge because they have an existing store in the area that they're going to have to modify, I guess, based on, I don't know if they have any restrictions now, but we can limit the garbage and recycling to not pick up between midnight and 5 a.m. And same thing with the other deliveries, nothing between midnight and 5 a.m. Would come in.
Mr. Castro, you think that that's acceptable and comparable to the guy that's
5 a.m. 5 a.m. My concern is, listen, the truth of the matter is it's close to a, elderly senior. Jason, can we get it to like 7?
I thought the other applicant agreed to 7 a.m. deliveries between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
You're correct, Brian.
Yeah, like I said, they have the existing store here and they're going to have to, I know it doesn't sound like a heavy lift, but it actually is with such a, larger company to restrict these things. So the midnight to 5 a.m., I think, I just think they need the flexibility, Mr. Chairman.
What is our ordinance requirements? I mean, I know you're gonna have, noise levels and, you're gonna
Well,
meet that criteria.
Mr. Nicastro, we would have to comply with the noise ordinance. That's non-negotiable. We can't seek relief from that.
Well,
You may not be able to do that at those hours.
Right.
Look at our noise ordinance. It says you can't even on construction sites, you can't do 7 o'clock, 7 a.m.
Well, if there's an ordinance on deliveries, then we would have to comply with it. I mean, that's, I'm not debating that if there is an ordinance.
Well,
I'm
I
not
think
so
that
sure
what the board is seeking is, we know that that's the case, but I think they want to understand in the context of this application, how it's going to work. So, perhaps we can look it up during the course of the hearing.
That's fine. Like I said, they don't have, I don't believe they have any restrictions now, and I'm not saying that that's dispositive on this application, but they would be willing to limit the deliveries.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Tubal, why don't you've got two other professionals that need to come up. Why don't we table this one, let our professionals take a look at our
Sure,
ordinance
that's fine.
and see if there's any actual ordinance restrictions that you must comply with, and if you need to comply with those restrictions, then they are what they are.
Correct. I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's move on, please.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, may I ask a few questions of this witness?
Sure.
Mr. Martell, your testimony was that the largest delivery truck would be a WB50. Could you just provide in your next resubmission a circulation plan showing that truck backing into the loading zone?
Sure.
All right, thank you. And then have you considered or are you providing crosswalks at the driveways? Because it is a 360 sidewalk around the facility.
Yes, we would provide crosswalks at all the driveways.
Okay. And then question for the board. There are some site triangles on this property, both at the corners and also at the driveways. Is it typical to have this the site triangles as an easement there, as opposed to a right-of-way dedication?
Rizzo, I don't know the difference to be able to.
My recommendation would be that the site triangles, both at the corners and the driveways, be provided as an easement.
Yeah, that's fine. Are you saying though in the DOT right of way as well? Because they would have jurisdiction over that, whether they wanted that, but on Wyckoff Mills, it would be the municipality.
Correct. And there's the corner at Strickland and
Oh,
Wyckoff.
gotcha. Yeah, if that's also under municipal jurisdiction, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
And then, Mr. Martell, do you have any exceptions to our technical engineering review comments in our March 26, 2001 letter?
No, we take no exception. We agree to comply with all the technical comments.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions for Mr. Martell, I can call Mr. Seckler, if you'd like, our traffic engineer.
Anybody on the board have a question? Okay, seeing none, please move on.
Okay. All right, so Ron, I guess we should swear in Mr. Seckler.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the.
My name is Matthew Seckler. That's Seckler. I'm with Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Okay, can you please qualify your?
Yeah, sure. Mr. Seckler, can you just, same as Mr. Martell, give the board the benefit of your educational background, licenses held, and experience testifying as a traffic engineer in the state of New Jersey?
Absolutely. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College in Schenectady, New York, Master's in City Regional Planning from Rutgers University. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm also recognized as a professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Been accepted before over 150 boards in the state of New Jersey as a traffic engineer.
Thank you. We'll accept your credentials, Mr. Seckler.
All right.
Thank you.
So Matt, your office prepared a traffic impact study as part of this application?
Yes, we did, and it was dated December 21st, 2020.
All right, and you also are working on the DOT permitting aspects of this with the New Jersey Department of Transportation, correct?
Yes, we have.
All right, so why don't you break up your testimony for the board into trip generation, parking, as well as the circulation within the site?
Certainly. And again, as part of this project, we did perform that traffic impact study, as I previously referenced, dated December 21st, 2020. As part of that traffic study, one of the first things we do is we collect data, we review the site, we see how the site operates in existing conditions, and then we layer on the additional traffic or the amount of traffic that would be added to the roadway network based on the standard industry measures. So as part of this project, we performed traffic counts in October of 2020 on a Wednesday and a Saturday. Understanding that this is a time of COVID and traffic volumes are lower than typical, we calibrated our counts to DOT data that was collected on Route 9 between Strickland and Edinburgh in pre-COVID times. So we took counts that were done during COVID, but calibrated them to counts that were done prior to COVID, so that we had a good understanding of the existing conditions in the proximate roadway network. Again, as part of this development, we are proposing some access changes. We are modifying the NJDOT driveways per their direction. We've had pre-application meetings and have filed our major access permit package to the Department of Transportation and have shifted the driveways. And I think I'll share an exhibit since this probably is better to review on screen. So this is the colorized site plan. I don't remember what exhibit this number was that Mr. Martell had given it.
I believe it's A10.
A10. So one of the improvements we're making as part of the Department of Transportation's request is we are moving the driveway that is currently in a non-conforming location for the department in terms of its proximity to the signalized intersection. And we've slid that entrance driveway more to the northern side of the property. And again, have kind of redesigned the egress driveway to meet the standard width requirements that the Department of Transportation will require. We're also adding a right-in driveway along Strickland Road. That is a driveway that is also under the Department of Transportation's jurisdiction. And we do have the full movement driveway on Wyckoff Mills Road to help provide access in that direction, which allows us to capture number of vehicles that are traveling to and from the general communities that use Wyckoff Mills Road. Wyckoff Mills Road is somewhat of a bypass roadway, basically connecting Route 9 to Adelphia Farmingdale Road. A lot of people use it in the northbound direction to kind of cut off going all the way up to Elton, Adelphia, and that traffic signal up there. So you see a lot of people going northbound and to the east when they get up to Adelphia Farmingdale Road, and the opposite direction. A lot of people use this to make a left-hand turn to go southbound onto Route 9 using Wyckoff Mills Road, again, as somewhat of a bypass road to Route 9. They jump on Route 9 southbound at Strickland Road. So again, it is a road that sees a fair amount of traffic, generally people coming from either the villages or the other residential neighborhoods kind of off Adelphia Farmingdale Road. Overall, we determined the trip generation of this site utilizing the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. This manual is the definitive source in the industry used by the Department of Transportation, county, and municipalities within the state to project future traffic that will be generated by a site like this. However, this site is somewhat unique in two fashions. One, it is replacing a gas station that's on its site and relocating a 7-Eleven that is one intersection to the south. So you would imagine the vast majority of the customer base is already on these roadway network because they're either going to the 7-Eleven one intersection south or going to the gas, depending on what purpose they have to come to a 7-Eleven with gas. So both those markets or both those customer bases are already on the roadway network. In addition, convenience stores and gas stations are typically located along busier roadways because they are not destinations for travelers. They typically are what's considered pass-by uses. People tend not to go out of their way to go to a 7-Eleven or go to a gas station. They go to it because it's convenient on their way to work, on their way to school, on the way to their kids' soccer practice. So it's basically something you do on your way to something else, a pass-by trip. And that's the vast majority of the traffic that be generated by this site is already on Route 9. So again, if you're going and you're one of the 25,000 vehicles per day that go north on Route 9, that's our customer base. 25,000 vehicles going south on Route 9, that's our customer base. That is in essence what our site lives on in terms of how it could survive in the industry, is the existing vehicle roadway volumes. To this measure, when we determine the changes in level of service and changes of delay to the proximate intersections, that would be the intersection of Strickland Road and Wyckoff Mills Road, the intersection of Strickland Road and Route 9, and all our site driveways, we see a de minimis change in level of service and delay. Overall, that intersection, if you wait at that intersection today or in pre-COVID times, let's say 35 seconds to make the left turn from Strickland onto Route 9, you may wait 36 seconds, so 37 seconds, a non-measurable or non-identifiable increase in delay, typically in the range of 0 to 3 seconds is what you'd expect should the 7-Eleven and convenience store be built on this property. So again, this is a type of use that benefits from the roadway volumes that exist. It is a relocation and I would say a reconstruction of existing uses in the area, and would not be one that would significantly impact the roadway operations in the site vicinity.
Hey, Matt, can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
Did your traffic study take into account the new gas station that will be south of Woolies?
So our traffic study did include what we call as background growth. So that is just general additional traffic in the area that could be based on residential developments in the area, vacancies that'll be occupied. We didn't specifically take that development in. However, that gas station, just like this gas station, lives off of the existing roadway traffic. There wouldn't necessarily be so much new traffic going just to that gas station. It actually may, somewhat split the increase in traffic between our site and that site. So although the roadway volumes would be about the same, our trip generation may actually be somewhat affected in the downward direction based on there being another gas station to the south of here.
Matt, just, can you just speak to the driveways themselves? Do they have proper site distance, geometry?
Yes, and again, what we've done with the DOT driveways, we've designed them to their requirements in terms of the separation from the intersection. The geometry has been appropriately designed. We've ensured proper spacing distance between our exit driveway and the Starbucks driveway to the north. That's all under DOT purview and all following their standards. We have a right-in driveway on Strickland Road, which I believe is the proper driveway design for a one-way driveway. It's a 20-foot wide driveway. I think your ordinance typically considers commercial driveways to be two-way driveways. So your design standards may look to having a larger driveway, but for a one-way driveway, 20 feet is appropriate. And then the driveway on Wyckoff Mills Road, again, is appropriately sized at 30 feet in width at the driveway, interior driveway location, and proper sight lines. And I think it was previously mentioned that we would provide all the requested easements to ensure proper sight lines going in and out of all of those driveways.
Okay, and there is a waiver request for the, I think you indicated earlier, for the width of the driveways along Route 9. Do you believe that those widths are acceptable and designed properly?
Yes, and the widths, again, are designed to accommodate the tractor trailer delivery. And I think you've heard from Mr. Martell in terms of the fact that we're willing to restrict our delivery vehicles to utilize our tractor trailers, to utilize solely Route 9 driveways. So they've been designed accordingly to allow for those movements to occur in and out of Route 9. And we believe they're appropriately sized.
All right.
How do you enforce that? Is that on the honor system?
No, that would be a condition of approval. And the 7-Eleven's resolution would be given to its corporate company with corporate entity, and they would have to enforce that with their drivers and the store itself. So that would be a condition that would run with the property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So Matt, just real quick on the parking space sizes, have you had a chance to review and analyze them? Are they adequate and meet industry standards?
Yeah, they are 9 by 20 in the location around the store. Those are the spaces that have the most turnover. Those are the ideal customer spaces. The spaces that are located, I would say on the south side of the canopy, those are 9 by 19. Again, both industry standard. We typically see anything between 9 by 18 to 10 by 20. So these basically both fit within that range of sizes with, again, the extra foot of depth located at the front of the store.
Okay. So in sum, all the driveways will operate at appropriate levels of service?
Appropriate levels of service. They'll operate efficiently in terms of ensuring the proper sight lines. I believe they've been designed to industry standard, as well as the internal site circulation. You've seen from Mr. Martell's testimony the way that the trucks can circulate the site without impacting the on-site circulation. So again, the site's been designed both appropriately based on its driveway design and its internal circulation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all I have for Mr. Seckler, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I have to say I am a little bit concerned. Mr. Tuvell, we did discuss this during the preliminary the preliminary review that we had about a month ago, and I had concerned that the access to Wyckoff Road, we got a lot of pushback from the residents that live in the villages on giving access to Wyckoff Road for the bank property that's just on the other side of Starbucks. I personally cannot review this this application knowing that we got so much pushback from the bank. About the best I think I could give you for Wyckoff Road that I would feel comfortable with would be an ingress road in off of Wyckoff only for southbound traffic, but no northbound traffic trying to make a left into the site off of Wyckoff, or any traffic trying to leave Wyckoff. Me personally, the bank didn't get it, and we got a lot of pushback from the residents. I personally can't allow it to continue with this application.
Well, Matt, do you want to
second that, Brian?
Yeah, and again, from our review of this is that obviously the southbound traffic on Wyckoff Mills Road that exists today, those are generally people looking to get onto Route 9 south. And without an egress onto Wyckoff Mills Road, what we're requiring those people to do is to basically go about 3,000 feet up and 3,000 feet down on Route 9, going up to Edinburgh, use the jug handle and come back down. And from a traffic engineering standpoint, having cars go an additional mile plus, mile and a quarter just adds congestion along the corridor. So again, I don't see how.
Mr. Seckler,
Yes.
Mr. Seckler, I appreciate it. The argument was the same argument we had with the bank. And they didn't get access to Wyckoff. So we can go round and round with this. Whatever you want, testimony you want to provide, I'm happy to listen. But so far, I've not been convinced that, but I'm just one vote. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. But I'm just
No,
one
Brian,
vote.
Brian, let me just understand what you're suggesting, because that was a previous gas station. So there was ingress and egress previously, correct?
And there's no
Off of
ingress or
Wyckoff.
egress to Wyckoff.
No, I mean, to be fair, there is no driveway on Wyckoff Mills Road today.
yeah, so there should be a new one going forward. If you're coming down Whitesville Road, Wyckoff Road, make the right out to Strickland and go into the gas station, because we're considering giving you the other driveway off of Strickland, correct?
Well, that driveway is DOT. The DOT controls.
And it's in only. The issue is the out is to get to Route 9 southbound or across Strickland Road.
Mr. Secretary, the concern I have, which Mrs. Beam brought up earlier, is the tractor trailer coming in from Route 9 that's going to be coming across the parking lot, making it, the turn, go around and then backing up, through the parking lot to unload. The driveway on Wyckoff is right there. You don't see that as a concern with cars coming in and out right there with these tractors a couple times a week with the tractor trailer, and whatever else, the box trucks, all that stuff?
Well, again, I think that was the key, is what you mentioned was the fact that the tractor trailer is like once or twice a week that is making that maneuver. So, in a span of a week, you're talking about maybe 10 seconds of a week in which that truck is backing.
Well, Mr. Seckler, can I just have a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
So the question that Mr. Leggio and others are asking is safety related, of ingress and egress and internal circulation. So, and I understand your answer that the danger may be occasional or infrequent, but does that make a difference that it's an occasional danger? I mean, is there a bright line as to how many times a dangerous situation occurs before it has to be addressed?
Well, I don't believe I said that it was a dangerous movement. It's a backing maneuver. There are cars that could back into the parking spaces along that front aisle.
Well, then let's stop there for a moment, because I think that's what Mr. Leggio was asserting, that it is dangerous. And your response was it only happens a couple of times. So I guess let's start with the first part of it. Do you agree that there's a danger, or do you disagree that there's a danger with this design, with the ingress and egress and internal circulation, specifically with regard to the issues that Mr. Leggio raised?
No, I don't believe that there's a danger with the infrequent backing maneuver that we've been proposed and its location for the tractor trailer delivery location.
Can I, Ron, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to get back to the driveway on Strickland, on Wyckoff Mills, if that's okay. We understand the concern. If we were to restrict left turn movements in and out of that driveway, would the board be okay with that? We could make sure that the driveway is properly channelized and there would be no lefts in or lefts out of the driveway.
It would also help enforce the tractor trailer's prohibition out that driveway, I imagine.
Yes, if you
by putting
could,
the island.
if you could restrict that, I'd be happy to review a plan that shows that restriction and how you accomplish that.
Okay.
Mr. Nicastro, you're muted.
Muted, Rob.
Talk.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can they bring up their traffic pattern just to show what you're talking about? That
Oh,
movement?
just to describe what we just said?
Yes.
Okay. So Matt, can you just describe what we just said?
Certainly. So this is the same exhibit that I was referring to earlier. What we could do is we could install a full height channelized island, basically one of those kind of triangle shaped raised islands. So this would not be mountable, so that vehicles that could enter coming southbound, or they could exit and basically put themselves back towards Strickland Road. So you're not having anyone exit here and head up to Wyckoff Mills Road. That would be prohibited. Anyone heading northbound, anyone coming in the northbound direction, it would also be prohibited by a channelized island, which would also, in sense, restrict any of the larger wheelbase vehicles from using this driveway, because it'll have that island in the middle of it, the channelized island in the middle, the triangle. So again, it would basically just serve the ability to get back to Strickland Road and not really add any traffic, I would say, to Wyckoff Mills in general, because you're not sending people back northbound in that direction.
Mr. Castro, I think that seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think isn't that what happens at the park and ride off of Wyckoff?
The park and ride, yeah, only has an ability to make a right-hand turn. You're right. It's not, you cannot make a left.
You can't make a left, right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tuvell, does that conclude your testimony with?
Yeah,
Mr.
as long as, yeah, I was just waiting to see if the board had any other questions, but I'm happy to bring up our planner, Ms. Cafone.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for this this expert?
Yes, I can just ask one question.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Rizzo.
Mr. Seckler, can you just describe how a vehicle would then get on Wyckoff Mills Road north at this point? My one concern would be if a vehicle exits south and then utilizes the entrance road to do a 180 turnaround to get to Wyckoff Mills Road north. Is there another opportunity?
I mean, the other opportunity would, I guess, be just utilizing Route 9 and head north, but at least you're going north to go north, if that makes sense, in the sense that there are obviously Wyckoff Mills Road and Route 9 are parallel, although slightly separating. So if your eventual destination was Adelphia Farmingdale Road, you likely take it up to, let's say, Elton Adelphia, and then cut over in that location if your goal was to go north on Wyckoff Mills Road.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Tuvell, next.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Ms. Christine Cafone, our professional planner.
And I believe she's going to be testifying against some variances that you need.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, it's Christine Nazzaro. That's Nazzaro, Cafone, C-O-F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701. I've been qualified as an expert witness here in Howell and in excess of 400 and something other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey. I am currently the principal and owner of the Cafone Consulting Group. I am an adjunct instructor for the Land Use Center for Government Services at Rutgers, where I teach planning and zoning courses. And I'm also an affordable housing special master in about 30 different municipalities.
Will the board accept Ms. Cafone's qualifications?
Sure.
I'm sorry, did she say she's a licensed professional planner?
Yes.
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 Okay, yes, we'll accept your credentials, please.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you.
So Christine, you visited the site and the surrounding area as part of your preparation?
Yes, I did, and reviewed all the application submission documents, as well as the professional review letters issued by the board and the zoning ordinance and master plan in Howell.
All right, great. So can you give your professional planning opinion on the variance and design waiver relief sought in connection with the application? I think we should maybe start with the items that are relevant to the buffer along Wyckoff Mills.
Okay, certainly. So yes, just to put some color on this application, this, as the board well knows, this is an existing developed site with an existing gas station facility currently on it. So in Howell, we need a buffer because we have, as Mr. Martell very articulately explained earlier in the evening, our property line is the most conservative and closest contiguous line to the adjoining residential zone. So because Howell requires us to have a 50-foot undisturbed buffer in that area, we do have some encroachments in that we don't meet the entirety of the 50 feet. And then beyond that, we have some accessory structures and fencing or masonry walls for the refuse area in that buffer. So I think this morning, I know Mr. Martell had some conversations with Shari Spiro, and we're confident that we can really, the quality of the buffer, I think, is really what we want to focus on here from a planning point of view, is that we are compliant along 72% of the frontage of the property for that buffer. But I think what's important when you're evaluating the subject property is to understand that while we may not be compliant, the quality of that buffer will certainly seek to meet the intent of the township's ordinance with respect to buffering. As far as having, I think somebody asked earlier, will it be a 4-season buffer? And it of course will, and we'll work with your professionals to make sure the quality of that buffer where we are non-compliant in the southeast corner is satisfied. So those are the variances that we require. It's because we are contiguous to a commercial zone and we don't have the 50-foot buffer that we require. So in addition to that, we need some variances for, as I said, the accessory structures being located. The trash enclosure on the front yard of Wyckoff Mills is a variance, as well as the masonry wall screening that is a variance. And I think the board can consider, I think that that's essentially, other than the signs, which I'll talk about after, I think the board can look at the grant of the variances in conjunction with this application under the C1 and C2 statutory criteria. This is an existing, it's a developed site on the Route 9 corridor that has 3 frontages. So you can see how that constrains the application to locate and properly design around our accessory structures. So I think the board could use the 3 front yards certainly as justification for the C1 or the application of the C1 criteria. In the absence of any hardship or C1 criteria, if the board finds that one or more of the purposes of the land use law would be advanced, you can grant the application. Statutorily, we just have to advance one. I think here there are several of them advanced. I think criteria G, which talks about sufficient space in appropriate locations, is certainly advanced by this application. You heard Mr. Sackler talk that this is a use that thrives on pass-by traffic. So I think that this is certainly an appropriate location. And you also heard Mr. Martell testify earlier. We meet all of the bulk criteria in the HD1 zone. So we conform with the setbacks, we conform with the coverage. This is not as if we're putting a site or trying to develop a site that doesn't respect those. So I think the board can certainly conclude that criteria C, adequate light, air, and open space, is also advanced by this application. And that leaves us essentially with the signage variances. I believe, Mr. Tuvel, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we decided to modify our sign package for the canopy signs in accordance with Planner Beam's recommendations.
You can always speak for me, Christine, you know that. Yeah.
Only when it makes my job easier, which
Yeah, no, joking aside, yes, based on the board, the board and Ms. Beam's recommendation, yes, we'll remove the 7-Eleven box sign that's within the canopy and just leave the striping, correct?
Yes, and I understand that Mr. Martell's testimony was that, of course, the branding, but I do think that because we are able to still have the colored banding on the canopy, I think that no one will have difficulty identifying the 7-Eleven brand, and I think that that's appropriate. And I do think, again, that the multiple frontages here is justification for the signs.
Did removing those box signs on the canopy, did that remove the requirement for the variance?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to maybe Ms. Beam on this, but her initial report said we had 6 signs. So I think now we have 2 walls. What's
2
that?
or 3?
Wall signs?
Yeah.
2,
2.
because we removed the 2
They're
canopies.
allowed to have 2 signs because they're technically a corner.
Yeah,
Plus
so
the
we don't.
Yes,
So
so I
Ms. Beam,
think,
we don't have a variance issue anymore, correct?
yeah, I'm just,
Chairman, I think we still do have a variance issue in that,
Yeah, we have one
believe-
variance left, I believe, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, because of the color of the signs adjacent to the, or not adjacent to,
Traffic
but
light.
in
within
proximity-
100 feet of a traffic pole device, right? It's the color of the
Okay, so
signs, Chairman.
Please, please proceed with working on that specific variance requirement.
So sure. So that we're left with the color of the signs using red, amber, or green. And because with being within 100 feet of a light controlled intersection, which is the requirement in your ordinance. So I think because we do have those colors on our signs, but they are not moving, they are not flashing, and they will not in otherwise be any way distracting to motorists. I don't think that there's an issue with us violating. I believe that intent of the section of your ordinance is not so much related to the color, but really to eliminate anybody having a distraction. That's why you have the proximity to the intersection requirement. So I see no substantial detriment there, which is the test. The test does not ask you, when you're looking at the entirety of our variance package, to hold us to a standard that there be no detriment, just that the benefits of the grant of the variance outweigh any detriment. And here, I think the wholesale redevelopment of this property is absolutely consistent with not only the purpose of the HD1 zone, which is specifically to provide for highway-oriented development in the Route 9 corridor, which this does, but also to advance one of the objectives in the 2019 reexamination report, which was to encourage the redevelopment and revitalization of vacant or underutilized properties, and this does that. So unequivocally, I believe the applicant has met its burden of proof with respect to the positive and negative criteria for the grant of the variance. I think that they can be granted under the C1 and C2 statutory criteria, and the negative criteria has been satisfied with no substantial detriment to the public good.
And Christine, just to also sum up, I don't know if you mentioned this, but you agree with
Thank you.
Mr. Martell that all the conditions of the conditional use standards are met, correct?
I do, yeah, otherwise we wouldn't be at this board if they weren't. We'd be at the zoning board seeking a D variance for unmet conditional use standards. So I absolutely agree with that.
Thank you. All right.
You're
Sorry,
welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tannenhouse.
Yes, Mr. Leggio.
So three issues are on the table that Mr. Duvall, that they're going to address in regards to what Mr. McCastro said earlier. The landscaping design, trying to buffer as much as possible for the villages. Our lighting issue, we're changing the light bulbs, or less bright, or less glare. That's your specialty. And the entrance on White Clough Road. So we're gonna, all these three things will be dealt with Mrs. Beam and our the professionals.
Yeah, they're gonna have to, it'd be my recommendation that if we grant something for this applicant, that we grant preliminary approval, and that the applicant makes these adjustments and comes back for final. But I'll let Mr. Cuchero
That's
weigh in
fair.
on that one.
And I just want to bring up one other thing, Brian. And Ron, I'm looking at the resolution for Gil Petroleum, SP 1006. We limited the fuel from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yes, we thought it was 10, but it's 9. All right.
7 to 9. All fuel deliveries shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Thanks, Mr. Nicastro.
Ron, can you address that? Can we?
Sure. So I don't have a particular recollection of what led to that condition in Gil Petroleum, unfortunately.
That came from the public. The public was real
Yes.
hot about that. That was public comment.
So what I can tell you is I did take a look at the ordinance while we were on break. And our noise ordinance at section 268-7B does limit some noise levels between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. If you give me 1 second, I can tell you how they describe it. It's impulse sound is limited between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. to, I believe it's like 80 decibel levels or below. And it has to be continuous noise though, which means that it has to happen, I think, more than at least 4 times an hour. So it's possible, during that time period, if you had garbage trucks certainly and deliveries, that
What
ordinance.
about a refrigerated box truck or trailer delivery?
It still has to happen at least 4 times in order to be considered a continuous noise under the
And it's
ordinance.
50 decibels from 10 PM to 7 AM. And then after that, it's 65 decibels.
What I can tell you, just looking at it from a different perspective, is the board may want to consider the fact that the applicant is seeking relief from the buffer between their property and the residential property. And I think the board does have an ability to explore certain conditions that would mitigate, certain factors that might ordinarily be buffered with the full buffer, and noise might be one of them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cuchero, for the advice.
But let's hear from Jason. Jason, this ain't your first rodeo. Let's get this ironed out.
Yeah, I mean, I indicated earlier, I mean, they need the ability with the fuel, because it's on demand, to be able to do it when it's called, and for the fresh foods. I said those were the ones that they cannot have a restriction on. However, I did indicate that they can restrict all other deliveries, the box trucks, and any other type of delivery that comes there between midnight and 5 AM. I think that's fair. I think that there's no restriction on the current 7-Eleven now.
Do you think it's fair if a truck rolls up and gets gas at 2 AM in the morning for the residents that live right there, that they hear this?
Well, I don't know. So, Mr. Nicastro, I don't know the other application, but I can tell you this: if you looked at the plan that we did, the fueling area specifically, okay, not put the loading area aside for a moment. Our fueling area is adjacent to Route 9.
I get it. I see that.
It's well outside the buffer. It's adjacent to Route 9, which I think is a positive there. So if a truck did come in the later night hours for fuel, it's hundreds of feet away from the residential.
Okay.
Well, again, I think, Mr. Nicastro, I say we just wait till, there's no reason for us to argue about this anymore. We've said our piece. We know what we approved in the other applicant just south of this applicant. And we're going to open it up to the public, and we're going to get some public comment, hopefully, on this subject.
Fair enough.
And let's get the input from them, and then you guys can make a business decision, and we as the board can make a board decision. Ms. Beam, is there any concern about the red color of the signage so close to the traffic light? Is there an alternative that could be presented that would be in compliance with?
I will say that the red lettering for gas station signs is a pretty standard lettering for that kind of signage. I myself do not have concern that someone's going to mistake the gas station pricing sign for the light. I don't think that that's a realistic concern. But there is, like if you're concerned about it, that's fine. Maybe the lettering can be white or whatever. I do think though, and I would defer this back to Mr. Travell, isn't there like some kind of like industry requirement for this? Because I do recall, and now I'm going to date myself, when we heard the application for the quick check on 33, which had the same concern on the pricing sign close to the light at Colts Neck Road, there was some discussion of the fact that like diesel is a certain color and gas is a certain color. I don't remember specifically, but
Mr. Beam, gas is red and diesel's green. That's how it is on those gas stations.
Right. So
how it is.
If that's a standard, I personally do not have a concern that it's going to confuse a motorist in terms of, conflicting with the traffic signal.
Ms. Beam, I would take your recommendation. Does anybody else on the board have a concern with the sign color?
Yeah, I don't know.
Seeing none, okay, we're going to move on that subject. Mr. Tuvell, does that conclude your testimony? Should we open it up to the public?
Yes, in the event we need to bring anybody back to answer anything, we're happy to do that.
Okay, Ms. Romano, can you please open, oh, well, let me, before we do that, do our professionals have any other questions or comments to?
I do not.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Brian,
Okay,
can I just ask a quick question?
yes, Ms. Spiro.
Did the board want that island, that stripe currently at the corner of the building? Would you prefer that to be planted bed, or would you rather have it striped as is?
Can you bring up the plan? I'm having a tough time visualizing what you're talking about.
And someone who had a screen sharing ability?
Yep, no problem. I'll put it on here.
I know Mr. Martell mentioned it. I just wanted to see if the board desired to have it just left as striping due to, you know, trucks running over curbs, or if you'd like to see some green space there.
That area where your hand is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna do well with any plantings in that, you know, on that corner. That's gonna be.
I would agree. I think well, I guess we'll find out when you do the truck turning radius, if you need that extra room to make make any turns or movements. Why don't we wait till we see the updated plans, Ms. Spiro?
Okay.
We currently do have a truck turning as part of the set. It was just the additional movement of backing into the loading zone, which was requested. So that is part of the back of the set currently.
Did I miss that?
And they did submit A14 as a truck turning template for a WB50. If you want me to put it up.
Yes, please.
Just
I
give me
can
a
put it up too, if you want me to put it up.
If you want to go ahead, then Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Because I got a truck turning template for a WB50, one for an SU30, and another one for a fire truck, and I marked them all in as exhibits.
Correct.
Yeah, so Jeff, do we need that striped area?
Am I sharing this? You see the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, good, sorry. Yeah, so C18, the answer is no, Jason. C18 shows a WB50 truck entering Route 9 clockwise around the canopy. The additional movement requested was to show it backing into the loading zone, which we're happy to do. And then the truck leaves the site, exits on Route 9. Doesn't require any overlap of that island. It is assumed that all of the parking spaces are full or that there's no encroachment. So,
are you able to provide an alternate plan to just show some additional plantings in there so we can review it?
Yeah, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
the applicant's agreeable either way, so we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say what Jeff said. We were fine with Ms. Spiro's comment if the board was okay with it. So if
why don't we show an alternate plan and then we'll review it at the next meeting.
Great. C19 was just the trash truck and 20 is the fire truck.
Thank you.
I think the bigger focus with the plantings, you know, as far as your client is concerned, is the buffer, you know, against White Gulf Mills for villages, where the white pines that you're talking about are going to be removed or not removed or planted in between. I agree with Mr. Nicastro that we need to really, you know, sack that, make multiple layers, whatever your architect and landscape guy come up with, to buffer the villages. You should put a lot of time and effort into that, because that'll help us help us go along. Believe me when I tell you that.
Okay.
So, and you already, you know, you're on board with that about changing the trees and, you know, trees that lose their leaves that are just, you know, and evergreens, you know.
Correct.
That's
all. They heard you, Mr. Leggio. They're gonna definitely provide additional buffering and additional plantings and work with Ms. Spiro.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just a question. In listening to what you just said, I guess you want them to put together a concept for the buffering before you vote.
I believe it's my recommendation today that we're only going to be going for preliminary. There's too many items here that need to be addressed, I believe, for final.
All right, well, that's what I was asking, because when you said, at the next meeting, I didn't know whether you were talking about if there was a positive action tonight granting preliminary with that as a condition, and the next meeting, meaning when they come back for final, or if you meant not voting tonight and then they come back with something and perhaps you're in a position to vote.
What would be your recommendation? Would your recommendation be to vote at least preliminary?
You could do it either way. It's both of them are legal, but what I was going to say in addition to that was that I think there may be a benefit to the professionals talking to the applicant to gain a little bit more detail and understanding of the delivery protocol in order for us to make a better, more informed recommendation to the board regarding any potential limitations and conditions. So if you were to grant a preliminary tonight, my recommendation would be that one of the conditions is that they work with the board's professionals and come back with a specific proposed delivery protocol at final. If you just wanted them to come back and provide you with some of the revised plans, they could do that also as part of coming back and maybe be in a position to get preliminary and final. I think the applicant should probably have some input on, which of those options they prefer, assuming it's not a denial. I mean, I don't want to take that off the table.
Agreed.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I speak on that? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I would prefer, if the board were to act favorably, I would prefer the former, where the board would grant preliminary, and then obviously Mr. Cucharo would draft a resolution with specific conditions that we'd have to follow, which actually would be helpful and instructive, so that when we would come back, we would hit all of them and there would be no misunderstanding of what the issues are. So I actually think the former would be helpful because it would provide detailed instruction in writing.
That's fine. I have no objection to that approach.
Okay, but obviously we need to hear from the public, so.
Okay, so are we ready to open it to the public? All right, Ms. Rubano, can you please open it to the public? It is now 9:13. If no one, we'll give them about a minute and a half to start asking questions. If no one comes forward to ask any questions, we'll close the public portion in about a minute and a half's time.
Okay. At this time, the chairman has opened up the hearing for members of the public. Anyone wishing to ask questions or comment on this application, please use the raise your hand feature. Again, if you're calling in, you need to press *9 to raise your hand. You will need to have audio and video. You will be asked to give your name and address, and you will be sworn in.
Is anyone raising their hand? Can you just remind them of that, Mr. Rubano?
Yes, at this time, if anyone's looking to ask questions or comments on this application, please use the raise your hand feature, as the chairman has opened up the hearing to members of the public.
Can you please also remind them that if they're on a phone only type of situation, how they go about raising their hand using their telephone?
Yes, using the telephone, you press *9, and that will raise your hand. And I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand.
You've got about another 10 seconds left before we've hit our minute and a half mark. Okay, that's it. Did anybody raise their hand at all?
No one has raised their hand.
Okay, then we'll close the public portion of this meeting.
Okay, at this point, the chairman has closed the public portion. Thank you.
Mr. Tuvell, would you like to summarize? Or, I mean, I've got on my list that you're going to look at removing the pine trees and additional plantings in its place. We're going to look at dark sky compliant house shield side lighting calculations to be done. We've got no signs on the canopy. We're going to show the WB goes into the loading dock area. We've got a site triangle easement. We've got an agreement on all of CME's technical comments. And we've got an ingress off of Wyckoff Road from the north, the southbound traffic only, and an exit of the southbound traffic only coming on to Wyckoff Road.
Yeah, with
And
a,
we need better
channel.
buffering between.
Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt you on that, Mr. Chair, with the channel, we said with a channelized pork chop island, which is what I think Mr. Seckler indicated to ensure that the traffic flow went that way.
Something that someone can't run over and jump over, try to make it an illegal turn.
Correct. Yes.
The only thing we didn't discuss, but I believe I saw on your architectural plans is that you have a portable generator hookup scenario.
Correct.
For emergency purposes. Is in fact that true?
Yes. So in the event that there is an emergency, they subscribe to a service where somebody will bring a generator there that has the hookup, like you said, right there, so that they could power the store and power the gas.
So if we have another Sandy event, people in the area will be able to
come get milk, get gas, etc. Yes.
And you did not mention in your testimony, but are you dispensing diesel as well, or is it only gasoline?
It's only low flow. You could not get a high-speed diesel truck, could not get fuel there.
But you are offering diesel for automobiles.
Right, correct, for like smaller vehicles. That's correct.
I have no additional questions. Does anybody else from the board have any additional questions before we ask Mr. Tuvell to summarize?
Mr. Chairman, just in addition to the conditions that you listed, there were some conditions that aren't necessarily planning amendments, but like they were going to provide the phase one to the planning board and to the environmental commission. They agreed there'd be no drive-throughs, no outdoor seating, things like that. Not necessarily planning revisions, but those conditions as well as everything else was on the record as well.
Right, we would stipulate to all the operational testimony that we provided and all those things. Correct.
So in order to get final, one of the things we're definitely gonna have to make sure is the environmental commission box is fully checked.
Sure. Yeah, we met with them. We're happy to provide the document that they wanted. And Mr. Chairman, so you need like a writing from them, like a memo or something like that, just to confirm they got everything.
Yeah, when you submit everything they were looking for, they'll put a no comment, or they'll make their final comments, and they'll be part of our package.
Sure.
Well, I'm going to put in the resolution also that just provide a copy to us as well. A CC of the letter to the environmental commission with the attachment. So that way there's a record of it as part of our record as well.
Okay.
I could recommend it all comes to me anyway, and I'll make sure they get it, and they'll send the report back to me.
Okay.
Okay, if no one else has, Mr. Tuvell, have you concluded your testimony?
Yeah, we've concluded our testimony. The only thing I would add in summation is that I think we've met our burden of proof regarding any variances sought on the site plan. We obviously demonstrated we meet the conditions of the conditional use standards. We worked very diligently with your professionals, both before this and during this with the board, to address a lot of the comments. So based on the discussions we've had, I would respectfully request that the board grant preliminary major site plan approval, conditional use approval on the variances and waivers sought based on the conditions that Mr. Chairman, you just stipulated to, and that at a later date, we would come back for final major site plan approval. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure presenting in front of this board.
Thank you. So if nobody else has any other further questions, I'll entertain a motion for preliminary site plan approval with all of the stipulations that we discussed and Mr. Tuvell agreed to.
And that would include the conditional use, the variances, and the waivers, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion with all conditions discussed that we grant preliminary.
I would second that.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Leggio,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, everyone have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Do we have any reason to go into executive session of any sort? Or
No,
any master plan update?
No
Yeah,
executive session, Mr.
Chair. I'm gonna contact, Mr. Nacastro, Mr. Leggio, Jennifer, and, I'd like to schedule our first meeting for the 8th, next Thursday, 5:30 PM, and get the ball rolling already.
The master plan hearing dates are already set and noticed for. It's the fourth Thursday of the month. If you're gonna have a different meeting, I have to re-advertise.
And I don't
It's
think that-
for Thursday?
The fourth Thursday, if you give me a minute.
Okay.
Which is the 22nd, I believe.
22nd.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. If they're already on there.
Okay. Fantastic. Do you have any reason for me to show up at that meeting, Mr. Babai?
No,
You're welcome. Anybody's welcome.
As long as we don't create a quorum.
right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just can't create a quorum. I didn't know if you wanted any input for the first meeting, that's all.
I
Are
mean,
you-
between now and then, I mean, I welcome anything.
Okay,
I would request anyone who is not on the subcommittee who wants to attend, send an email to Eileen so that we can keep a tally and make sure that there's not going to be a quorum there.
And
Agreed.
are you meeting in person or do you need a Zoom meeting set up for that?
I would prefer to meet in person.
Well, I think,
For me, it'd be easier to do it on
The
Zoom.
only problem
But
is, the
I
meeting
think
in
we
person is we can have the
probably,
public.
we probably need to coordinate that with the administration. And, there may be some health-related policies about how the building's being used. So we're gonna have to defer to that. So we can find that out tomorrow.
Sounds good.
You said 5:30, right?
7 o'clock is your time frame that's been
Advertised.
advertised.
So guys, the fourth Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock, I have another meeting. So 5:30 works for me, 7 o'clock does not work.
Then we'll have, yeah, I mean, we'll have to bump it up to 5:30 then.
We can do another notice.
Yeah.
That works for me, Paul.
Cool,
Okay.
good.
And it's at 5:30. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
prefer 5:30.
And Mr. Cucchiaro, the Board of Ed has been using the town for meetings in person, with multiple members. So this is small. So hopefully they don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying they've been doing their meetings with the superintendent, assistant superintendent,
Well,
and all the board.
At various committees.
Mr. Leggio, they'll find out. It's beyond our control. It's part.
No, sure,
the
I understand.
It's the town manager's call, and the town manager doesn't unfortunately have control over the planning board, so he'll have to let us know.
I understand.
Paul, if you could just get with your members and let me know if you're
Of
going
course.
to time for all your master plan meetings, then I can do one notice that they're all going to start at 5:30.
Okay,
Otherwise,
yeah, I'll touch base with everybody
and let
early
me know.
next week.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that being said, if there's nothing else to discuss, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everyone have a great holiday. Happy Easter, happy Passover.
Happy Easter.
And so forth.
All right.
See you
Take
next
care,
time.
everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.